Hello folks, welcome back. Today we're doing lesson and assignment number 19, which is the female reproductive system. Now the assignment is basically similar to the male, where I'm going to give you a couple slides. We're going to talk about them. You can add things to the slides like I do or talk about, but you don't have to add notes because there's a lot of work to do. There's quite a few sheets, a little bit of reading, some diagrams, and then you have to submit it to me. So yeah, it's going to be very similar. So let's just get right into it. Let's just start talking about the female reproductive system. You should be looking at the slides that look like this in your note package now. So, in the female reproductive system, one egg or ovum, which is, remember I said there's lots of different terms for similar things, one egg or ovum is released about every 28 days. Compare that to men. Remember, that's your next assignment. 350 to 500 million sperm versus one egg every 28 days. During ovulation, a mature egg breaks out of the follicle. Don't worry, we'll explain what that is. Follicles are an area where eggs are stored. The feathery ends of the fallopian tubes guide the egg downwards to the uterus. And there's a certain time where the sperm has to meet the egg to have a child. During that trip of the egg. So just like there's the trip of the sperm where the sperm has to go, well, there's kind of a path that an egg takes through a female, and there's certain times where things have to happen if you're going to actually get pregnant. So let's move on. This is pretty fascinating. An egg can only survive 24 hours to 48 hours unless the sperm fertilizes it. So it's actually a very small window. There's like a 2-day window a month where a woman is most likely to get pregnant, because if the sperm meets the egg at other times, it's not going to work out. The uterus is where a fertilized egg develops. Now, that's not where the egg gets fertilized, though. See, the uterus is, if the egg got fertilized, this is where the egg would attach. It would attach to the uterus, and this is where it would grow. So the uterus is where a fertilized egg develops into a fetus. The lower entrance is called the cervix, which is connected to the vagina. Let's move on. So this is pretty cool. I think we got more slides about it, but right here, you've got ovaries on each side. They're kind of the comparable thing to testes in men. Now, they produce estrogen and progesterone, and they also produce eggs. So now what happens is these eggs are there's follicles here that have eggs, and one egg will break off from either this ovary or that ovary, normally only one a month, right? And it'll start to travel down the fallopian tubes. Now what happens is there's a 2-day window about when the egg is right about here that the sperm actually has to meet the egg there to make fertilization happen. Because as the egg goes out, it can't get fertilized in here. Too late. The egg has to be fertilized in the fallopian tube, and then it needs to successfully travel into the uterus and attach to the wall of the uterus. So you could get an egg fertilized here, but it might not attach, and then you wouldn't become pregnant. You could get an egg fertilized here, and it attaches, and then it will grow into a fetus, you'll become pregnant. The other thing to know too is that sometimes a sperm can reach an egg in here, and the egg will get stuck or fertilized or start to grow in the fallopian tube, and that could kill a woman. That could be very dangerous. You could need surgery to get that fixed or get the egg removed, because you could die if the embryo fertilized starts to grow here. That can be very dangerous. So in a perfect world, it travels out here, it gets fertilized in this 2-day window, and as it's fertilized, it moves along and it successfully attaches. Here are all the parts, right? Endometrium is the lining of the uterus. This whole area here is called the uterus. That's where a baby is going to live and grow once it's fertilized until it is born. Fallopian tube is the tube that it travels down, kind of like a vas deferens in men. Cervix, vagina, and vulva. Let's see what else is in the slides before I give you too much information. Before and after ovulation. Now, ovulation is meaning when the egg is released every month. Before and after ovulation, the female reproductive system undergoes changes. This is called the menstrual cycle. LH, or luteinizing hormone, and progesterone are released to help with the menstrual cycle. Now, this is kind of neat. If an egg is fertilized, then the menstruation cycle doesn't occur. So if an egg gets fertilized and attaches to the uterus, no more period, no more menstrual cycle. If no fertilization takes place, then the uterus wall sheds, causing the menstrual cycle. Now let's go back and think about this, right? Because what's happening here is this area of the uterus, for that month, when that egg is being released, from right after when a woman has her period or menstrual cycle, that uterus is building up blood and nutrients. Why is it building up blood and nutrients? Because if a fertilized egg lands there in the next month, it's going to need something to live off of for a while. Because yes, we know that you have an umbilical cord, but do you think that the moment an egg is fertilized and hits the uterus, it just makes an umbilical cord? No, that's not how it works. That egg actually has to absorb nutrients and blood from the area around it until that umbilical cord grows. So this whole area of the uterus is making blood and nutrients for that egg until it grows an umbilical cord. So think about it. Egg comes out, gets fertilized, it lands on the uterus wall and it attaches. It uses that blood and nutrients to survive. And after a while, an umbilical cord connects to the mother, and then that becomes the main connection for that egg or fetus to get nutrients and blood and oxygen and things like that from the mother. But in the beginning stages, it has to use everything built up in the uterus. Now think about this. If that egg doesn't get fertilized and it doesn't attach, well, all of the blood and nutrients inside the uterus, it needs to go. It's almost like it has an expiration date every month, right? You can't use that blood and minerals and nutrients anymore, so it sheds it, and that's what a woman having her period is. It's kind of actually fascinating. It's prepping up every month to have a child, and if it doesn't, it gets rid of everything, and then next month, tries again until an egg is fertilized and attaches, and then the menstrual cycle will stop. Now, when you think about birth control, you can kind of think about basically birth control tricks a woman into thinking that she's pregnant by giving extra hormones so that this egg is never actually released, which is kind of fascinating. Not something we're really covering here, but it's kind of interesting. That's how birth control works right now. It's actually tricking a woman's ovaries to thinking that it's already pregnant. Kind of fascinating. So that's it for the slides. We've talked about that. So your assignment is to read, just like in the men's section, to read the female reproductive section in your package, which I believe, if you look here, I've already flipped through a little bit. Let me just go back here. Is this, right? Same thing. And then what you're going to have to do is read everything. It gives you definitions of all of the parts of the female reproductive system. It tells you about how an egg is released. If you don't understand all this hormone stuff and the eggs, don't get too stressed about it. Do your best and submit it. This part is a little bit confusing, and honestly, the hormonal section of the egg being released is a little more complicated than we even need for grade 9 science, but do your best, read along. All your answers can be found right in this pack or in the slides above. You read through, you obviously answer the questions, do the diagrams, and then read more about the female reproductive system and do the questions. Now there's a couple here that have been crossed off. You don't need to do those. Right there you don't need to do as well. And then you need to do the diagram of the female reproductive system here, which is going to bring us to a comparison of the female and male reproductive systems in lesson 20, which is coming up next. So once you're done lesson and assignment 19 on the female reproduction system, and you've done all the questions and all the diagrams, and it takes a while, so I'm going to give you 2 days, you submit that into the Google Classroom and you get ready for the comparison, which is a very easy assignment. It's like a day, not even. You could do it in like 20 minutes, which is going to be comparing overall the male and female reproductive system. So see you soon for lesson 20. Take care.